Yeah, my name is Zed, and my talk is going to be about how to effectively use QA to get into the industry. I am a game designer at Firesprite, currently working on something that's not been announced, so don't ask me about that one. But you can ask me all about Last of Us and God of War, though. That's totally fine. I was gonna make a joke about like how it's early, but like I noticed that not everyone's as lazy as I am, so I'm not gonna make that joke. Um, Anyway, so yeah, as it was said, I started out in QA in April 2019 for Naughty Dog on The Last of Us Part 2. I was there for like about a year and a half, and so September 2020, and then we shipped the game in June, and then I stayed on for the Grounded patch, which is like just extra difficulty, some photo mode stuff. So I helped push that patch out, and then I left to join Sony Santa Monica for God of War Ragnarok in October of that year. And I was QA there as well until September 2021. And then during that time, like in the August, September, I joined the game design team. I made the shift, which is what I wanted to do. That's what I went to university for in California. So in August 2021, I joined the game design team, and then I went to till next year, August 2022, and then September 2022, I came here to work at Firesprite. And in case you're wondering how I could have been in September 2021, how I could have been in QA, but I started game design like a month earlier, it's because I was like doing 50-50 work. Well, this was a transition thing. I didn't do the Hermione thing of using a time turner and do both jobs. But yeah, that's my background. When I was in university, everyone told me, hold on, I'm gonna turn this mic on. Hello? Yeah, cool. When I was in university, I wanted to be a game designer. Obviously, that's what I did my bachelor's and undergrad in. But you know, it's a very competitive industry out there. You're not always gonna get the job you want, you know? I know we have game designers, artists, audio people probably in the audience, and you know, obviously apply for these jobs, but the reality is it is a very competitive industry, but you do need to get your foot in the industry. And a lot of my teachers, what they told me was, oh, you know, if you want to get your foot in the industry, and you don't get game design, how about you know, get into QA? And that's like good advice, you know, so you get into QA, and then you're in the industry, and then from QA, you jump into the thing you want to do. And that's sound, but the problem is it's not like a ladder you're climbing. You know, it's not QA game design. It's QA, senior QA, QA lead, QA manager, and game design is a totally different thing. So how do you do that jump? And obviously in Guinea, I was like, yeah, I asked the people who recommended that, how do I do that? And the most common response I got was, you know, I don't know, we'll figure it out, you know? And I did figure it out, but like, it would have been really helpful if I didn't have to. And I noticed that, you know, throughout the industry, there's quite a few people who went into QA and then became either they stayed in QA because they loved the position, or they eventually transitioned to the role they wanted to be in. But they all had to figure it out themselves. There isn't really a lot of resources out there to navigate this. And it's hard, you know, it's not as easy as everyone makes it look. It is hard, and that's why I made this talk. Anyway, so who have I seen? So I was in QA for like 2.5 years. I've been a designer for 2. So I've been more QA than design. So who have I seen join QA? There's 3 of them. The first one was me. I used it as a stepping stone to go from QA into game design. This is pretty common entry point for a lot of people. I have friends who joined QA and then became a VFX artist. They became a producer. You know, some of them just joined QA. They wanted to be in QA. You know, I'll talk a bit more about them a little later in the talk. But like some of the most fantastic people I've worked with, they've worked in QA for like basically their whole career. And the third group are like people who they like, I don't know, they're probably like doctors or like NASA scientists or whatever who are like tired of their day jobs, and they want to look for a change in career, and they're like, nothing really catches my attention except for video games because I love playing them, and it's easier to for a video game entry point. QA is easy because it doesn't matter what degree you have. Could be like in game design, could be like in VFX, could be in, I don't know, audio. All those degrees help give you an edge to join QA. If I had a game design degree, which I do, it won't help me get a job in audio, but it could help me get a job in QA. It gives me that edge. So yeah, those are the three groups of people I've seen join QA. I'm going to talk about how, if you're either of those three, not either, any of those three, how you can navigate QA better. All right, the first thing I want to point out though is like you should be genuinely interested in QA, because QA is not like one of the, this hopefully is changing, but a couple of years ago, like not a couple, like maybe a decade ago or something, QA was seen like as like a bottom of the barrel kind of thing. It's not really, honestly. QA, like they're not like, like, oh, I'm in QA, I need to get out of here as soon as possible. Please don't do that. We notice, people in QA notice, people in the department you want to go into notice, and that just turns everyone off. It's like not cool. And there's like so much to learn in QA. Like, again, my perspective is kind of limited because I'm from game design, but like as a designer myself, like when I was in QA, I developed this eye for like really like finding tiny details and exploits and stuff. And that has helped me in my design career to like when I make mechanics and I see how the mechanic's going to be part of the whole system. And I was like, oh wait, that mechanic combined with that mechanic, that might like be a problem, and that the only reason I could have done that is because my QA skills have like prepared me to look for that stuff, and it's kind of important. And I'm not saying I'm perfect and that none of my mechanics ever have exploits or whatever, but like I'm just one person. But it helps to like before it goes into the game, I've ironed out as many kinks of it as I could, It also has helped me like learn terminology of like other departments, like as a designer, I can now go talk to a VFX artist, and if they tell me some technical stuff that I normally wouldn't know about, I have a better idea of it now, only because like I've been in QA, I've worked with VFX artists there, learned some of the terminology, and not just VFX, obviously, like audio, cinematics, whatever, what have you. Like, so I've learned some terminology there, which I could have learned in game design, but it would be like learning on the job. It was better having learned it in QA when it was a more safer space. Okay, and then yeah, don't hound the department you want to get into. Like, don't be like, all right, cool, day one of QA, company directory, say you want to be a game designer, find all the game designers, be like, hello, my name is Zed, please give me a job or portfolio review, whatever. Don't like cold contact every single one of them. Don't hound them like that. It's not going to work. They're going to see that and they're going to be like, no. Let it like build naturally, because that's a better way of like having mentorship. And so how to do that? I do talk about it later, but it's just like letting you know, don't do that. Be actually genuinely interested in QA. There's a lot to learn. All right, so you've, sent all the resumes, you've, I don't know, cold called people, I don't know, gotten maybe a reference, and then you got the QA interview. It's important to know how you can because there's a lot of people interviewing for QA, and knowing basically anything that can help give you an edge is useful. So I wanted to dedicate a portion of my talk for it. So the first thing you want to do, so when I first joined QA, this is before COVID, so we could still meet in person. It was an in-person interview. Basically what we did was I went to Naughty Dog. I took a flight there. I lived in San Francisco before that, so I flew down to Naughty Dog. Was almost late because my flight was delayed. And then they gave me an hour, and they gave me a build. that had intentionally had bugs in it, and I had to play it, find the bugs, write it down either on a piece of paper or like they had their own proprietary software or something. I could use the PC. They said either or works, so I was like, cool, I'm gonna just write it down on pen and paper. Anyway, so that was important. That was the first thing I did, and even now, even if you're doing a phone interview, they might ask you for like, you know, things like that. So the first thing you want to do is be concise. You know, this is not, if you're a writer, this is not the place to start practicing your prose writing. Be direct, you know, like this gun, when fired at this enemy, does 0 damage. That's it, nothing more, nothing less. As a developer, there are times when, especially during polish phase, I'm gonna have more bugs than time, you know? So if I have to like parse what you've written, I'm gonna send it back, be like, info requested, please be more clear. So if you could avoid that and just be concise to begin with, that is very useful. If for a bug you have to like show a video, right? And the video, it takes like 5 minutes to go from like, to get to the area you want to show the bug is at. Don't show the entire 5 minutes, just show the last like 20, 30 seconds of where the bug occurs. And just that's the video you want to show. And the previous 5 minutes of how to get there is your steps. You'll write down. You can be a bit more verbose over there, but like the title and any attachments like videos or screenshots, make it as clear as possible that a person can get it in like a minute. Not a minute, sorry, that's like too long. 10 seconds. So yeah, be concise, it's very important. Yeah, okay, then know your priorities. This is important because like, if you're doing the test and you find a bug that causes the system to crash, or you find a bug that has like a tiny like VFX missing, you know, if you have to write 2 bugs and you only have time for 1 more, you gotta be able to know the one that crashes the game, that stops the player from playing the game, kind of more important than if they just miss a VFX that it probably doesn't even exist. So know how to prioritize. But obviously not every bug is going to be that clear. Sometimes you have a VFX missing for a weapon and an audio missing for another weapon, and if you can write only one, you're like, how do I prioritize that? In an interview, probably just be like, choose one. But in reality, you might ask your QA manager or whoever your lead is, whoever you report to, ask them like, hey, which one is more important? And they'll probably be able to better assist you. I mean, knowing your priorities is very important. The other thing is, and this is hopefully not a real life scenario you ever encounter because it's hell. If you have a bug from your QA manager, another bug from the producer, another bug from the game director, you have time to write just one. Which one do you choose? In a theoretical scenario, in an interview, you're like QA manager because like that's the person who's interviewing you, right? But in reality, the answer is all of them want their bug to be written because they're all important people, and they're like, my bug is the most important. But in an interview, because the QA manager is probably interviewing you, QA manager is more important. Yeah, doesn't happen. Hopefully, it doesn't happen to you in real life. It's horrible. So here's an example question. Say we're adding a chainsaw weapon to the game. It's going live in an hour. What do you do? What do you test? Well, as I said, know your priorities. So you don't want to go and be like, oh, that VFX is missing. Oh, that, I don't know, audio clip is missing. What you want to test for is the basic like functionality working? You know, does the game, this is an actual question I got, by the way, at Sony Santa Monica. You want to test like whether when the chainsaw hits enemies, their life goes down. You know, the basic functionality stuff works and it doesn't crash the game. That's more important than anything else in the world. Because if it crashes the game, it might not pass certification for Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, whatever. So yeah, be careful on that one. But yeah, know your priorities is very important. But also, the next point is more important. It's something that I never thought would be important, and I actually did not even think of saying it in an interview until like the QA manager had to like, he was trying to nudge me to the answer, but I was like, there's no way he wants me to say that. But then like he had to like hit my head with a hammer, and I was like, oh, right. Whoops. Oh, right, we have teammates. because the QA department during like production can go up to like 100 plus people. It's not 100 plus people in the studio. I think at the height of Naughty Dog, we had like 60 people, 60 people in studio, but like there were like a couple people through PSSQ, which is like PlayStation QA. They're just QA people who work in Sony San Diego, or I think in Liverpool, and they're just QA who work on every project, and they're for studios to like hire and be like, hey, I need some more QA help, and I get help from them. But yeah, there's like 100 plus people. And so if you have a thing where the producer and QA manager and game director is coming at you with bugs that they want you written, and you have no time to write them all, the interview answer would be like, I would ask my teammates, and in real life as well, ask your teammates if anyone has time to help you out, because they want you to know that managers want to ask and want to know that you will rely on your teammates and not try to be a one-man army, because you're not a one-man army, you are part of a big team. So really be careful, really like stress the point that yes, I am aware that I'm part of the team. And that actually will probably give you an edge over like most interview candidates, because I didn't think of saying this. I'm pretty sure not a lot of people think of saying, oh, I will rely on other people. Because sometimes it feels like that's a weakness, but it's not for QA at least. All right, so now that we've talked about what happens in the interview, I'm going to tell you what QA does, because it's a little more than just play video game. That's another thing that I want to like help dispel. QA doesn't just play games and write bugs. A large portion of it is that. Don't get me wrong, but it's not all it does. It's very reductive to say that that's what QA does. So here's a video that kind of helps explain what QA does. So person on the left, the girl, let's say she's the developer. That bucket with the shapes is a feature that she's just pushed and is looking at QA to test it. And the person who on the right who will eventually use that is the QA person. So I'm gonna play a little bit of it, maybe all of it in just a minute. And yeah, then I'll come back to that. Hopefully it plays.
This is a square. Can you guess which spot that goes in?
The square.
That's right. It goes in the square hole.
Yes. Okay.
And how about this rectangle? That one?
Also the square.
That goes in there too.
Yeah.
Up next, we've got this thin rectangle.
The thin rectangle.
Can you guess where that goes?
The thin rectangle.
That's right. It goes in the square hole. And up next, a cylinder.
The circle.
I think that goes in
the circle.
The square hole. Now, we've also got this semicircle right here. Do you see a slot that would fit
the semicircle?
Semicircle?
The semicircle.
That's right. It's the square hole. Okay. Up next, the triangle. We know what hole that goes into,
triangle.
right?
Triangle.
That's right. The square hole. And up next, we have the arch.
The arch. The arch.
You guessed it.
The arch.
It goes in the square hole.
God.
So obviously when she made the thing, obviously she didn't make that thing, but when the developer makes a thing, they have certain ideas of what it would be, but then QA is like, nah. And that's part of what I was talking about. Like I see the ways my mechanic can be interpreted differently, or my mechanics can be like exploited. I see that before they go into, see most of it, not all of it, before they go into like the game. But yeah, that's a good example of what QA does. You make people cry. All right, so now that you're past the interview, you're in QA, what do you expect? So my first 2 weeks at Naughty Dog, so Last of Us 2 was at a state where it was playable from start to finish. So that's what I did. In the first 2 weeks, we played the game start to finish, and we had like times where we got to go talk to our mentors, who are also QA people, and they would talk to us about how to write combat bugs, how to write nav mesh bugs, how to write I don't know, collision bugs, exploit bugs. So the first 2 weeks were just learning everything and getting familiar with the game from start to finish. It's like a massive info dump. You are not expected to remember all this when you start. Well, actually, I didn't say that. Learn everything. But realistically, you're not going to remember everything. It's okay to ask questions. And then the next couple months after that is just, they'll assign you test plans for like, oh, here's like a VFX test plan, test the VFX in this level, and here's exactly what we want you to test. Test the, I don't know, collision in this level, this is exactly what we want you to test and how we want you to test it. And that's like the next couple months. So it's basically reinforcing everything you've done the first 2 weeks. And it gets kind of boring, I'm not gonna lie. But it's important. It's important for you to like know how to do things, so you don't have to constantly like you have to know where to find information. You have to know who the bug goes to. You have to know how to set priority. These are all important things for you to be able to do things that are beyond just play games and write bugs. This is that phase. The first couple months will just be you playing the game in a very specific way and writing bugs. But after that, once you have like a better idea of what the game is going to be about and how to play and what to expect when doing things, you'll start to specialize a little bit. So the very first thing you might start doing is, I call it stability tests, but only because you can shorten it to stab tests. But they have other names. They can be called performance testing, whatever. But the whole point of them is that is also just test plan that you're following. But the thing is, you need to know how the game works. Because, like, example would be like, you might be. I should have thought an example before I came here. You might be like testing how a weapon, how an enemy reacts to a weapon hit. You can't know what to expect if you've not played the game, So once you have a better idea of what to expect from the game, they'll start making you do tests where just to ensure everything is working as intended. That's probably the next step. And the next 3 is like not necessarily like a linear line. Depending on your interests, you could be put on either of, on one of them, all of them. I was essentially on all of them. So the second thing was assistant writing test plans. What that means is, like, say you're doing your test plans, right? And you're like, oh, I was testing for this, but it wasn't reflected in the test plan. And then you talk to your whoever wrote the test plan, your lead, whoever, and you can be like, what if we add this? And then you're like, they'll be like, cool, or they'll be like, nah, and they'll edit the test plan based on what you said. But also you work with publisher QA. Like I said, Sony has a couple of QA people that we can rent and work with, and they're on our project for a while, but they don't have the direct exposure to developers that I did while I was in-house at Naughty Dog. So I would like look at their bugs, make sure it goes to the right people, it's assigned to the right priority. I would also talk with them like in case like there's some section of the game that should not be tested. Maybe like the camera is going to be broken for some reason while they're working on it. I will let the publisher QA know like, hey, for this week, don't test this one particular feature because it's being worked on. Assisting with test plans, working with publisher side QA. And the third point, you work directly to QA the work of the discipline you want to go for. That was important because that's where like you start making those relationships, to help you transition into that department. I worked with Pete Ellis. He's an alumni from Teesside University, and he was a game designer at Naughty Dog. And I worked with him. I was just QA in that I worked on his levels. I made sure his levels were ready for playtesting. I made sure like I was up to date on every information, or like when new features were coming in, what would be broken, what would not be broken, just because they're working on it. So I worked with him directly for that. And that's how I started. I didn't like immediately be like, oh, by the way, I want to be a designer. I just started talking to him about things like, oh, I noticed that there's a lot of rags in this. Rags, like it's if you not play Last of Us 2, it's just an ingredient that you can use to make like Molotovs or whatever. Oh, I noticed there's a lot of rags in this level coming from the previous level, and the next level there's also a lot more rags. Maybe we can like balance combat and stuff. Like those are like tiny things that like once we had a rapport, I could like tell him, Then he started asking my feedback on like stuff that was coming in, like enemy placements and stuff, you know. And then we started talking design slowly, and then it just went from there, you know. Obviously, I'm going to talk a bit more later how exactly, or at least just expand on it a bit more later. So you can do that. You also will sit in level reviews. So Neil Druckmann, Pete Ellis, they're all like Naughty Dog had a theater. So they would like go there, play the game on the big screen, record it. I would have to sit in, like notice the bugs and write those bugs up. But it was also super fascinating because like, since I wanted to be a designer, working with design, I was sitting in design reviews and I got to learn from Neil and Pete, just like see the thought process. They would like some simple things like there are areas in Last of Us 2 where like the character one character that crouches down and the other character uses their hand to boost up and onto the ledge. Just that, like they would talk about which character should be the one who crouches down, which character should be the one that climbs, the narrative impacts for it, the AI impact of it, and I was just like, wow, there's like a lot of thought that goes into like the minute things, That's also where I gained my eye for like details, because like Neil would be like, that was an animation pop over there, and I'd be like, I don't see it. Like, where do you see? I would go to the animator and be like, hey, Neil said there's an animation pop here, and the animator would be like, I don't see it. But Neil saw it, and then he was right. Eventually, he pointed out, and I was like, oh shit, yeah, there's a pop there. I didn't even notice. But that's where I got that eye on like how to look for things. So getting to sit in reviews is pretty cool as well. The last one is the closest you're gonna get while still in QA to actually work on the title. And you get to do like some smaller things, like for Sony Santa Monica, what I did was, when you enter a new area, it'll be like, welcome to our region discovered Midgard, region discovered Bandit Camp, whatever. It's all like on a trigger, so as soon as the player enters it, it shows up, unfogs the map, all that good stuff. So I was the one who, not for the entire game, but like for quite a bit of the game, I was the one who scripted those things. Because it was a simple task, someone needs to do it. And I had the technical knowledge, just go in, put it in, it's cool. So that's another thing you can do as QA. Obviously, I'm just talking, this is just one example. There are a lot of other things you can do. Some even that I don't know because I wasn't involved, because I'm just wanted to be a game designer. But yeah, so that's what, hopefully this slide helps you know that it's beyond just play games and write bugs. There's a lot more that happens. And there's actually more than this slide covers, but we would be here all day, and that's not what the talk is about. So, you finished the interview, you now know what to expect from QA. How do you utilize your time effectively, right? Well, the first step, just chill out, like seriously. Do not be me. When I first started, I was like, I'm gonna work all the hours I can, take up all the extra shifts I can. I was just like so hyped to be a Naughty Dog, That was like my dream studio, and I got it that was my first job. And my mentor at the time, she was like, dude, like, we'll be here, like the game is still like a ways out, like this game comes out a while from now, so like don't like burn yourself out. And I was like, that's never gonna happen. And that happened. So yeah, please like, when you first join, just don't like burn yourself out immediately. It's really exciting to be in the industry, and you're like, yeah, I want to like, do everything. It's okay to chill. You don't have to like hustle every single second of your life. It's okay to chill out and like, work in like small bursts. All right, so at the beginning of this talk, I had mentioned there were like 3 kinds of people who I've seen join QA. I'm gonna just go through all 3 of them and like see the best ways to like to give tips on the best ways to utilize your time. The first one is if someone is still figuring stuff out, it's kind of hard to give specific feedback on this, only because it's very broad. You yourself don't know what you want to do, so it's kind of broad. But something I've noticed helps is when you're beginning your first couple of tasks, you'll be doing all kinds of stuff for all kinds of departments. And you might find you prefer doing audio QA, but not VFX QA, So we're like, cool, audio QA. You might like doing stuff for game design, but not for environment art. Cool, game design. Pick a couple things that you like. Go to your QA manager after a couple months. Be like, yo, I would like to try these things because they interest me, and I would like to work closer to them. Obviously, you might not get all three of them, or how many ever you choose. Depending on space, they might be like, okay, you can work in audio. Let's see how that goes. And maybe it doesn't work out. Maybe the intuition didn't really feel it. You didn't feel it. It's fine. It's fine to just change, but do be aware that it's not going to be like immediate. If you decide, okay, actually maybe audio QA is not for me. I want to try working with game designers. They're not going to do that the next day. They need time. First of all, there needs to be space to put you there, and then there needs to be transition time because someone else has to train to what you were doing. So it'll take a second, but you have to be patient. If none of them are clicking, then maybe, and you like your current job, then maybe you want to be QA. Maybe this is cool. QA is really fascinating. There's a lot more there than I could ever explain in this one talk. Maybe during the Q&A you can ask me questions. But yeah, if none of them are clicking with you, maybe it's QA. Maybe that's what you want to do. Anyway, basically at the end of a couple months, maybe 5-6 months, you are not figuring out anymore. You are one of the other two people who knows they want to be either in QA or they want to use it as a stepping stone to get into some other department. Okay, so say you are someone who wants to be in QA. You can carve out your niche, and one of the examples, because this fascinates me a lot, is speedrunning. I watch speedruns of Last of Us 2 all the time, only because it's like, how could someone do it better? Because we had one person in Naughty Dog who was just the speedrunning person. That was his niche, At Sony Santa Monica, we had a person who was the combat person. He just knew how to I'm not a combat person, so forgive me if I'm using the wrong terminology, but he knew how to frame cancel and whatever fighting stuff. So he was really good at that, and that was his niche. He was the fighting person. So yeah, carve out your niche. Maybe if you're really good at something, there you go. You just talk to your QA manager, be like, hey, I want to be that person. And if there is need for that, cool. If you want to be more on the administrative side of things, you can make the test plan instead of just assisting them. Maybe they're for the first God of War 2018, or the fourth one, I guess. The Blades of Chaos came in apparently a year before development ended. So you'd be working on, hey, design would be like, hey, we're gonna do this new weapon, or not new, but we're bringing back this weapon. Also spoilers. Then QA would be like, okay, how do we test this? You talk to designers, you talk to audio, you talk to VFX, and you make test plans for people who are joining you or more junior members of QA to test it. It has to be clear and concise for people to know what they have to do to test things and what kind of bugs they can write, who they assign it to and stuff like that. So you can help make the test plans if you want to do more administrative side of things. And you can also manage, if you're more of a more senior QA, you can manage and mentor new QA. So basically, when you joined, you had a mentor. Now you're the mentor, and you're managing other people. This is all what people can do in QA. But actually, one more thing that I did not know until I joined the industry, and that is make tools. So in Sony Santa Monica, and I'm not sure if we had them in Naughty Dog, I don't remember, but at Sony Santa Monica we had tools QA, and what they did was their job was to make the regular QA's lives easier. What they did was, so we primarily tested on Sony consoles, right? But we had to write bugs on PC. So say we found a bug in the game, and we had to record it, then put the USB in the PS4, get the video file, put it into the dev PC, transfer that, trim it, put it in the bug. It was a lot of work. So what they did was they made a tool that on PC, so I just connected my dev kit to my dev PC. I clicked a button, it will start recording the video. Click the button again to stop recording the video. And then in the pop-up, I could just like trim the video there itself. So it really helps streamline the process. So that's what they did. They made our lives easier. There was one bug we had, one tool we had at Naughty Dog, where towards the end of development, when you're doing polish stuff, so say you so everyone's just playing the game from start to finish to find all kinds of like progression-related bugs. Maybe if you play the 6th level from the beginning, it crashes, but not if you just play the 6th level directly. So you play from the beginning to the end, just to like try and break things, make people cry. So one of the bugs, say you found a bug where it's like a grass blade is going through a wall, right? That's a bug. Minor bug, but it's a bug. You bug it. Someone else comes to that area, they see that thing, they bug it again, because third person comes through, sees it, bugs it again. Normally you'd go through the database to like, see if the bug is already written, but there's so many grass blades going through the windows, going through a wall, that you can't tell if that specific one is written or not. So something that they did at Naughty Dog was they would take the XYZ position of where the bug was, and then they'd take the character's position, and they'd make a circle around it, around the character, and if that bug's XYZ location was within that circle, it would show up on screen. So I would write the bug, second person comes in, turns on a debug, sees it's all written in, they wouldn't do it again. Again, tools QA makes lives easier. They also automate certain tests. So like, so in games, you don't play the game from start to finish every single day. If you want to test a bug on level 5, you don't play the game from level 1, right? You have a debug menu that says level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you can just load into it. And even within level 1, there'd be level 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, so you can go to specific areas of that level. So what the tool was every morning, before we came in, the test would just load into every single major level and sub-level, make sure it loaded correctly, and then give us a green or red. And then when we came in at 9 or 10, it'd be like, cool, whatever is red, that's a good place to start testing. Whatever is green, it's probably fine. Obviously, a human can do that. A human could have just loaded into every level, said yes, this works or not, but that's just wasting time. When AI can do it, why not let them do it? I say that, and they'll just take my job soon. It's cool. Another thing they do is they make sure dev tools work, because we use if you're using proprietary engines, or if you're using Unreal Engine or Maya, Unity. Every studio usually has like something to help modify it, so their own plugins or whatever, and they the tools QA make sure that it's still working. If Unreal updates, they're making sure that the plugin still works. They're not going into like too much detail with that, but like just making sure the basic functionality works. Like developers are not like finding that out as they need the tool, So yeah, tools QA is another thing that you can do if you're like more inclined towards being like a programmer or something. Anyway, so if you're someone who wants to use a stepping stone, like I was, what you want to do is, in the interview itself, let your QA manager know that, hey, this is my aspirations, I want to be a game designer. I want to be a VFX artist. I want to be a, audio person. And they will help you. Like they will give you like a realistic timeline of like, hey, this is how we can help you. Obviously, like sometimes timelines get stretched out or whatever, depending on if availability is there or not. But they can tell you how they help. Like for game design, they helped me work with Pete and a bunch of other designers. And through there, I got my rapport. And eventually Pete became a mentor, and then he recommended me at Firesprite, and now I'm at Firesprite. Took a while, but it did happen. One thing that QA managers should not do is, as I said, it might take a while, but that shouldn't mean that you can't become senior QA or QA lead or whatever in the meantime. This shouldn't stifle your QA growth just because you want to do something else. Like they shouldn't chastise you for that. If a manager does that, not a good manager. But yeah, this is a point I wanted to throw in there real quick. Yeah, and so yeah, when you're in that position of like working with the person you want to eventually become, don't hound them immediately. As I said, like don't be like, hello, portfolio, job, please. Don't do that. Use the time you get from like doing tasks for them. Let the conversation start flowing naturally. Like with Pete, eventually when we started doing, when he started asking for design stuff, and I gave him feedback, he's like, dude, you're actually good at this. You should like be a designer someday. And I was like, you see, I want to be a designer someday. And then from there, he was like, oh, it worked in my favor, and he helped me like get the design sense that he helped mentor me basically. Obviously, you don't have to wait for the person to be like, hey, you should be a designer someday, or you should be an audio person someday. If you feel you're comfortable enough with them, it's fine to bring it up, but don't be like, I want a job now. Like you can ask for tips. You can be like, hey, I'm interested in being an audio person someday, audio engineer someday, and I look up to you. I was just wondering, if you could give me tips. That's a more respectful way of doing it. It's not, you're not hounding them. So it's cool. But that's like some stuff you can do during your job. For stuff you can do outside your job. So at Sony Santa Monica, we had a writing club. It was just not just for writers. It was just during lunch every other Wednesday or something. We would like just have the writers and like a bunch of other people like come in for a lunch club and give a talk, or just like talk about the writing process of like how the script is written and all that stuff. And that's where people who wanted to be writers could interface with people who were writers. And they get tips from them, and they could get the face time that they needed. Maybe their job wouldn't have let them work with writers directly, but this was a way outside of work. No, not really outside. It was during the lunch, so lunch club. It let them talk to the writers they needed to talk to. The other thing is if there's like a local game developer meet, like in Liverpool, we have a Liverpool Game Developers Network, and then at in California, basically all over America, we have game developers. I forgot what it's called. Whatever. But we have local meetups, and just go to those meetups. You might make connections that you need, and eventually can help you. Maybe not at the studio you're at, maybe at a different studio. But it's important to take basically every opportunity you can get. Not every opportunity. I did say don't burn out. Don't burn out, and take all the opportunities you can get without burning out. So that helps. This is something that helped me for Sony Santa Monica to eventually make the jump to game design. If your studio does proprietary stuff, after work, not during work, because again, don't like shirk your QA responsibilities. Those are important. After work, you can work on your own things using their proprietary engine. So I worked on making a level using Sony Santa Monica's engine, and there was also another way to like talk to people, because I was like trying to set up an encounter. I didn't get it, and I was just like, I read the documentation, whatever I could, and I still couldn't figure it out, so I had to ask a designer. And then, I got to talk to the new person about encounters, so it helped me out. But yeah, don't ask them everything. Do read documentation, because they will ask you, like, did you read the documentation? And I said, yes. And then they found out, oh, there's the one piece of information missing, edited it, cool. If you ask them every single thing, don't read documentation at all, they're gonna be like, yeah, this person's like not serious enough to like be able to find their own answers, So yeah, work after hours on your own things, but also remember that this is a high risk, high reward thing, because you now know their proprietary engine, but if they don't have space, you're not gonna get in, and if you get let go, then you might have to you can't use it as a portfolio piece. So like how many hours you spend. Not necessarily wasted, because then they know that you know their stuff, and eventually if a space opens up, it works. But I got lucky, there was space, and I immediately got in. But yeah, high risk, high reward, but it does work. Yeah. So, as I said, the reality of the situation is it is luck-based, you know? Like, there has to be space for you to move to the next department. And I got lucky in that towards the end of development for God of War Ragnarok, it was about like, there was a little over a year left because I got in August and the game came out in November. So I got lucky in that they needed people. There were more bugs than people to fix them, and I already knew the system because I was working on it in my spare time. So they were like, "All right, cool." They interviewed me, liked my answers, and then they got me as a game designer. So that helps. So mainly towards the end of development, there might be roles that open up, but the problem is that then you're only there for like till the game ship. If you're not full-time for a contract, you might get let go after that. But honestly, like, I mean, obviously it does suck to be let go, but your name in the credits will have whatever the position you want. For me, it was game designer, and that helps. In this industry, credit really matters. So the whatever title you can get, it's important. Another time that a lot of positions do open up is when they're ramping up production. So they're done with like concepting, they're done like figuring out what the game is, and now they're like, cool, let's make the game now. When they're ramping up production, that's when a lot of roles come up as well. But the issue with that is like they don't need a lot of QA pre-production, so you might never have been part of the company at a certain point. So at that point, yeah. Another thing that you need to know is, as I said, luck-based. So don't get disheartened if you work at a company. Try your best to form all the relationships that you can, but they just don't have a position, and then you have to like go to a new company, start over. Happened to me. I was a Naughty Dog. I made friends with Pete and a bunch of other designers. Didn't work out. Didn't have a position, and then I had to start over at Sony Santa Monica, which there I eventually got my break. But again, it was not wasted because my time at Naughty Dog was not wasted because I learned a lot in QA, first of all. But other than that, I also had a connection with Pete, who eventually gave me my referral for the game design position I have at Firespray. So it worked out. Yeah. So some of the things that helped me, I've actually covered most of this, so it's kind of useless slide, I guess. But again, I have that eye for details now, which may or may not be a good thing, because at work it's great, but not at work when I'm trying to enjoy other games, it's horrible. I don't know if people know what LOD is, but LOD is basically like, there's a thing, if you're standing close to it, it renders in full detail. If you're standing further away from it, it renders in lesser detail, and if you're even further away, it renders in like the least detail ever. And as you get closer, obviously, like because the quality, it shouldn't visibly pop, but sometimes it visibly pops because some games they don't really QA for that. And when I see that, it bothers the shit out of me. Even though some far off building, I'm like, I can't play this game anymore. It sucks. It really does. I kind of watch people play games because I was like, how are you not bothered by that? And they just don't notice it, but I do. But it's good for my job though, so it's cool. And as I said, like I can see issues with my design before I commit them. That is like a very useful thing. Again, this is very specific to me. I know that, but I'm fairly certain like whether you're in VFX or audio, it's going to help. And yeah, knowing terminology. Like I was recently talking to a cinematics person, and I knew what reverse shot was. It was really cool. So I had to like, I learned that as a designer too, but being QA, I had learned that there. So I already knew how to tell what I wanted to communicate in a much better way that they understood because it's their terminology. But yeah, it helps. Basically, if what you take from this talk is, QA is again QA is amazing. There's so much more to QA than just playing video games and writing bugs. And if you have not seen the movie Grandma's Boy, don't watch the movie Grandma's Boy because it's about QA and it's a terrible representation of what QA does. It's also a bad movie. But yeah, QA is a lot more than that. It does, it's useful no matter what you want to do. As I said, you learn a lot of things about other departments that you normally wouldn't if you had just joined that department immediately. So yeah, I hope you have a better understanding of what QA is, because that was my goal. And thank you.
I'll grab that one from you. No worries. We just stay here for any Q&A. Rightio, we're going to do some Q&A now. So if anyone got any questions for Zed at all? Yeah, we've got some on the right here. So we've got the microphones just on the end here. Where's my right person? Just one of you. Let's grab this one. Chris, do you want to run down and grab this one? There's no one on this side. Cheers, superstar. Yeah, just get the one in black there for me.
As part of your development, what was either in The Last of Us Part 2 or God of War Ragnarok, the section you had that had the most bugs that you had to write up? What were the bugs, and how did you go about actually getting it sorted?
Hello? Yeah, cool. So your question is, in either Last of Us 2 or God of War, what was the section with the most bugs? Is that what your question is?
Yeah, and how you written them up and how you got it sorted.
Fair. Okay. So obviously, we had to train for all kinds of bugs. That's what I did. I wrote all kinds of bugs, like collision bugs. Any exploits that I found. If you could go into a particular area and just kill all the enemies because you entered in a very specific way, they would not be alerted, and just you just kill them all off. Those kind of bugs. So once I write the bug, it depends on the studio. So at Naughty Dog, at the time, we didn't really have producers, so we would assign the bugs myself, and then I would follow up with them based on if they on the Jira ticket, if they were need more info, or if they were hey, I fixed it in the CL, then I would go the next day and see all the bugs that came back to me as fixed. I would test them, or if they were need more info, I would give them more info. At Sony Santa Monica, we actually had producers, so basically the same process, but I just wouldn't assign the bugs to them. The producer would do that, and the producer also put the priority and stuff. But yeah, it depends on the studio basically, but that's what the whole first couple months is about. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Great. We have a gentleman there further up there, Chris, with the grey top on there. Thanks.
This is more of a studio-wide question. At Sony, is there a heavy crunch culture? Is that something you haven't really experienced in your time?
That's a good question. I actually forgot about that. I wanted to tell you, when you're in your interview, do ask them about crunch policies and stuff. It's not seen as oh wow, he brought up the C word. It's fine. When you're in the industry, that's something that you have to be aware of, and the reality of the situation is, when you're reaching end of development, it's called Gold Master, when you're trying to send the disc off for development, you're trying to make the game as bug-free as possible so that people don't have to download a day one patch to play it, because internet's not great everywhere in the world. And at Sony, that's the hope is that you can play it without the day one patch. Obviously, day one patch makes it better. So yeah, we had to crunch for the Gold Master. If we were doing what's I gonna say? A press tour thing where the press is gonna play our game. For Last of Us, we did that in September. The press got to play our game, and to make sure that build was amazing, because the press asks all the questions. It's insane. Every question they asked me what the street name was, and I was the street name doesn't matter. Why are they asking me this? Anyway, whatever. So yeah, before important deadlines, you have to do it. Some studios are worse about it. Some studios make it a year crunch. That's horrible, but that's mismanagement. But yeah, I would best to ask the studio during the interview.
Yeah, a lot of newer studios, especially nowadays, the young studios that are starting up, the indie ones, they have opt-in crunch time and stuff like that, where it's optional if you do want to actually do something for the project and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely do ask in your interview stage, because it's something that they should have to hand, that sort of information.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Got one down here on the left. We'll do you first and then go back over.
If you're doing QA stuff or you want to be in QA, is there any way to show, like, what would you say the best way to show your QA outside of professionalism, like in your spare time? How would be the best way to present that to companies and things?
That you want to be, oh, that's a good question. That is a really good point. I had not thought about that. I think what I would recommend would then over there would be like, so in your interviews, you know how on YouTube you can see like bug compilation videos of like, this game has like all these funny bugs. Maybe something like that is what I would try and do like outside. But normally, like if you have a degree in game design, and if you can like talk about like some of the common questions they ask you is like, tell me a bug that you found in a game. How did you go about reproducing it? Because you want to be able to do it like in a 100% manner, you know? Like it has to be
Consistent.
yeah, exactly. So just tell them like, this is what I did for the other games. Maybe if you can make bug videos, like compilation videos, that'd be cool. That would be my advice for that.
Yeah, thank you.
No worries. Got the one in black there just behind. Don't worry, we'll get you next in the hat.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's okay. Just got it down. Sorry. During your time at Q&A, do you often rely on using in-house development tools, or do you often rely on like other proprietary tools that you would need to know about beforehand?
So the debug tools that have been presented in all the companies I've worked at have all been like made in-house. I've not really ever used anything that's already been given. Yeah, I don't think so. But mostly just whatever QA tools or other tools programmers make to help us out. I've used that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Fabulous. The one in the hat just down here.
As someone who wants to work for Naughty Dog one day, it's like dream job. Is there any interview tips or tricks that you'd recommend, or like application
Depends
process?
on which, what role.
Environment artist, prop environments.
That's a very good question. I'm not an environment artist, but what I would say is probably like, you need to have a really good portfolio. For Naughty Dog, since you're in the UK, they would have to like sponsor you and stuff, right? So if to get sponsored, you need to have like, you can't be a junior. They're not going to sponsor junior people because it costs a lot of money to get sponsored in the US. It is a nightmare. I know. Anyway, so what you have to be like at least like senior-ish level, and then I'm pretty sure by the time you're a senior, you have a better idea how to answer this question than I can answer it. But yeah, just have a good portfolio, really. Be able to explain your processes. And yeah, just have general enthusiasm for the studio, which I think you already do. So, yeah, but you have to, as you're in the UK, it's kind of going to get harder. They will prefer someone in US than the UK, but it's not like out of the question. Like as I said, Pete Ellis, he's from the UK. He's alumni from Teesside. He worked at Naughty Dog, so it's not impossible.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. Just down here on the front row.
Hello. So my question is about working with third-party, like outsourced QA. Have you, in your career, either as someone working in QA yourself or now working as a designer, had any experience working with third-party QA houses?
Yeah, all the time. Yeah.
How did you find those experiences, and what sort of challenges sort of arose from them?
I think one of the biggest challenges is, as I said, like third-party QA usually works with other studios as well, and other studios might not have the same bug writing policies as we do. so getting them on board with that, because sometimes they might, that's one of the reasons why I had to like screen their bugs, is like they might write bugs in a way that maybe it's written at Insomniac, but Naughty Dog's a little different. So that's one challenge. Sometimes maybe like miscommunication stuff, like, oh, like I had mentioned, like, oh, for like a week don't test this, but then they just didn't get the whole week part and just never tested it again, and it's like, oh shit, no, it was just for a week, it's cool. So some miscommunication stuff, and maybe like, yeah, not really a lot more than that, at least in my experience. Yeah.
So similarly, following on from that, if someone is looking to use QA as a stepping stone, but they find that they've got a job at a third-party QA house that doesn't do any of its own in-house development, what might you recommend to someone in that position to leapfrog to a different game development position?
So that one is a lot harder. It's not impossible. I actually have a couple friends who were in Worldwide Studios QA. I think they're called BSS QA now. And then they came to like Sony Santa Monica on an actual role. I'm not sure how they did that. But I think personally what I would try and do is, it's a hard question. At least in Sony San Diego, like, the Worldwide Studios QA is a thing, but there's also a development team in there. Maybe try and go in that team, or if you're Worldwide Studios QA, try to go into in-house QA at the studio, and then the place you want to go. There's probably a better answer there, but I'm not the best person to answer that one.
Fair enough. Thank you very much.
No, thank you for your question. Any more questions at all out there? We've got one at the back here on the right-hand side. You got that one, Chris? Cheers.
So what inspired you to become a QA?
Well, I wanted to be a game designer, but then I did not get that job because of multiple reasons. And then as I asked people at my uni, like, hey, what's like the next best thing to do? And they said QA. And when I first started interviewing for QA, I was like, okay, I'm going to just use this as a stepping stone. I was in the mindset of like, I need to get out of here as soon as possible, But then when I got in there, I was like, actually, you know what? This is actually a lot more than I thought it would be. So I wasn't inspired beforehand, but when I joined, I was like, okay, this is like, again, that's part of the reason why I wanted to do the stock, is because I had a totally different outlook of what QA would be previously, before I joined QA. And then I was in QA and I was like, everyone's wrong. QA is amazing. Like, so it was more, I found the passion during the job than before it.
Thank you.
Yeah, as a producer, QA is the bane of my existence, though. Yeah. They constantly make me cry. Anyway, any more questions out there? Any at all? Okay. Yeah, we're good.
Thank you.
Everybody, round of applause again for Z.